mind, Simon. I don't mind who
Okay.
answers first. As we just talked about it,
Well,
why
I
don't
was a
you kick us off,
vegetarian
Miranda?
from the age of 17. Yeah, yeah. I was a vegetarian from the age of 17. Um, yeah, and didn't really realise the error of my ways until fairly recently. You were a full-blown carnivore when we got together, but being happy to be cooked for, I was happy to eat all of my vegetarian stuff. And then, like several years ago, it would be in 2015, I had a friend who became vegan because of health issues. It cured her migraines, it cured her high blood pressure, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But then I saw a video about the dairy industry, and it broke my heart, and I couldn't believe that I hadn't realised the link between cow's milk and what they have to do to get cow's milk. Like they're not the only mammal that just lactates for the lols. They actually are raped, give birth, have their babies snatched from them so that we can drink their milk. And I was just horrified that I'd been doing that for so long. So yeah, I just knew that I had to make a change. At the same time, you had a lot of health issues, didn't you?
Yeah, so I'd been in a fairly stressful career, did a lot of travelling, and I'd been on blood pressure tablets since my late 20s, early 30s. And as Miranda said, I kind of started down this route by sort of slowing down with the red meat, but I was still eating chicken, fish, and all the dairy stuff. And I had an old man checkup with my GP, and she said, "Simon, we're going to need to up your dose of blood pressure tablets. You're also borderline diabetic now, and your cholesterol's very high. And how are your irritable bowels?" And they're not good. So what are you going to do about it? And we had seen a few Netflix documentaries, whatever, and I said, well, I'm going to have a word with my wife, and we're going to talk about switching to veganism. So we did. That was January the 1st, January 2nd, 2016. I felt completely different within about a fortnight. Genuinely, I felt really a lot better. And then I had a checkup after 6 weeks, and the GP said, "Oh my goodness, you can come off the blood pressure tablets now. You're no longer borderline diabetic. Your cholesterol's normal for a guy your age, and how are your bowels now?" And I think I can honestly say that I can't recall either Miranda or I having a cough or a cold since then. It's from purely from a selfish health perspective, it's been phenomenal.
Yeah.
I
think veganism's the gift that keeps giving, though, isn't it? You're saving animals, you're saving the planet, you're saving your health, and the view from the moral high ground is spectacular. I always say that.
Yeah. So our paths were quite different, but I think we're both feeling very much more comfortable about ourselves. And the fact that we're now sharing that with an interesting mix of people that come to the bed and breakfast, most of whom aren't vegan. And whilst it's nice for vegans to say to us, "Well, Miranda's cooking is amazing," it's much more rewarding in some respects to have non-vegans go, "Well, we had a couple at the weekend just gone. They weren't vegan. Henny actually said to you that he was really nervous about whether he'd be able to eat anything. He had this perception that vegan was something very strange." But they went away. They gave us a lovely review on TripAdvisor or something, and I think we've helped to, in a fairly small way, but we've helped to make people maybe think a little bit more about what they're eating. You agree?
I do.
That's amazing. Miranda, I'd love to come back to when you mentioned obviously you were vegetarian for a number of years, and then that you having this kind of like shock discovery about the dairy industry.
Yeah, it was like
your
an epiphany,
original kind of route? Yeah. Was your original kind of reason for being vegetarian, was it an ethical one? I mean, I was vegetarian myself for a number of years, and I definitely felt like I was, I wasn't causing any harm to animals. So I imagine this shock was pretty huge for you, if that was the case.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's painful because you actually do, you kid yourself that you are not hurting animals, that chickens happily lay eggs just for us to eat. That's very kind of them. And that cows are smiling in the fields as they produce milk for us to make cheese and butter out of. It's crazy, the disconnect, but we're kind of indoctrinated, aren't we, from such a young age about what's healthy and what's normal, and the way that things are marketed to us are all about this thing called humane slaughter, and all of these kind of words that shouldn't be together, just total tautologies. It should not be happening together, and we're led to believe it, and we happily believe it, and we happily do the same as everybody around us, because we're social creatures and we want to kind of belong, don't we? And I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Simon, thinking about your story back there, you talked obviously about this overcoming these incredible health concerns. And I'm intrigued as to the intervention from the doctor there. So this was obviously back in the UK before you both moved. Was was there any kind of sense from sort of UK medical professionals, from your doctors who were kind of supporting you, that veganism was any kind of option, or was it just a case of like cut down red meat, don't drink alcohol, etc., etc.?
Well, the actual conversation I had was with a trainee GP. So at this point we were living in Edgbaston in central Birmingham, and it was a very young, just newly qualified Asian female, and she got it immediately. She understood about the vegan diet immediately and said, "I think that would be a really good." It was really down to you, Simon. Can you? Do you think you could do it? And I always recall saying to Miranda in the early days, well, I always used to eat whatever my mother put in front of me, willingly, happily, and I never used to leave any food on the plate. So I didn't think it was going to be that much of a drag for me to try and do this, and it really wasn't. I mean, one of the things that we both feel is in that period, in the last 5 years, just how much more a wider range of vegan products and the availability generally, both in the UK and now we're here in the US, of vegan items. And I recall a conversation I had with a friend who said, "Oh, well," he chuckled and said, "Well, you're just going to be eating lettuce then, Simon." And it's not been that at all. I mean, we've eaten really, really well. We've had a number of, before we moved over here, we had a number of city breaks throughout Europe, and we went to places like Prague and Berlin and Iceland and Finland and places, Sweden, and everywhere we went, we were finding that there was good availability of food. I think the problem is not necessarily so much the availability of vegan foods now, but just this kind of barrier that people have as to what veganism is and the kind of people that are vegans. It's the point that you made before we started recording, is that actually, and many of our guests, I mean, I wouldn't classify any of our guests as being hippie-ish in any way. They're mainly younger people who have turned, but we've also had some older people who've said, right, well, my doctor has said, maybe you should, you should cut out all dairy and you should be cutting out red meat and and go plant-based, and they've done it willingly, and they're kind of cool with it. So
I mean, we're in the area that we're living in now in the States, in New York. We're an hour away from Cornell University, an hour and a half from Rochester. So Colin Campbell's at Cornell, got the godfather of the plant-based whole food movement, and his son is actually a medical doctor at Rochester Hospital, and there's a whole department there that's based on treating illness through plant-based eating, which is just phenomenal. So, yeah, I wouldn't say, I feel in many ways that the US is behind the UK in embracing veganism as a mainstream option, but it's certainly really progressive in thinking about different ways of treating you when you're unwell, and that's quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's it's small steps, but I mean, one of the things. Yeah, sorry.
No. You carry on. Sorry. It was a slight delay.
Well,
Go for it.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things that was particularly gratifying, apart from the fact that we have done very well in the 12 months since we were allowed to reopen after the pandemic, has been that we've had a goodly proportion of repeat guests, and we've got there are a handful of couples that are on their fourth or fifth trip. So that's in a year. So people are seeing this as a kind of a regular haunt. But I have to say, of those handful that are coming again and again and again, the majority of that handful are actually non-vegan. We've got a couple coming from Brooklyn, which is a 6-hour drive to upstate New York. They're coming for their 5th trip next weekend. They're not vegan, but they love Miranda's food, and they could pick any number of other bed and breakfasts, but they choose to come here, and so that's I think that's vindication of the fact that her food's pretty good. I got lucky.
I feel like a trip coming on when this pandemic's over.
I think so. Yeah, we'll give you a discount.
We'll give you a discount. Broadcaster's discount.
So, just thinking back to what led you into this particular world and this sort of transatlantic move.
Yeah, crazy. Well, you were in a corporate world, weren't you? I was initially a psychiatric nurse for about 17 years, left that abruptly, having had enough, fell into a job that was supposed to be a stopgap, and I ended up staying in it for 10 years as a manager, which I hate managing, the fruit delivery department of a national company. And we just got to the stage where, we didn't want to work for the man anymore. We didn't want to be employed. We wanted to do something together. We wanted to be our own people. And I mean, we got married in 2018. So, whilst we're, no spring chickens, we got a new life together and wanted to do something. And it became increasingly important to me, having become vegan. I just really wanted to feel that I was living my best life, that I had some integrity, that I was being authentic. And for me, running a vegan business, doing something that I enjoy doing and I'm not bad at, which is cooking, just seemed a natural thing for us. We looked at businesses to let initially in Birmingham where we were living, thinking about maybe opening a cafe or something like that. But then we thought about, actually, we're not really tied to Birmingham. We could maybe move further away. And initially we were buying a bed and breakfast in Barmouth in Wales. Yeah, crazy. That didn't work out. At the 11th hour, the sellers kind of messed us about. So that fell through. I'd handed in my notice.
We'd sold our house.
Yeah, it was all pretty okay. What we're going to do now? We continued to have an eye on the real estate market in the UK, but we couldn't really find any other suitable bed and breakfasts. They needed to have adequate living space because my dad was coming to live with us. He'd sold up as well to come. I'm an only child. I couldn't leave him hundreds of miles away from me. And all of the other businesses that were for sale didn't have adequate living, and they also needed a lot of money spending on them to bring them up into the sort of place that we wanted to run, because we didn't want to be a very basic vegan experience for people. We wanted to mainstream veganism really and provide people with something that you would expect if you're a carnist, but you learn to sacrifice if you're vegan quite a lot of the time. I was born in Florida, as you can tell from my Brummie accent. So having dual nationality was helpful as one thing. So I was able to. I started sponsoring Si so that he could become a permanent resident. We initially looked on the west coast of the US just to see if that was feasible. And we'd kind of done that at the same time as looking in the UK. But we got friends in Oregon, so we thought, oh yeah, let's go over there. Portland's great, it's going to be great. But there was nothing really suitable there either. And then suddenly there was a property that came up in New York State, and it looked
like it was too good to be true. The property prices at this end of the state are, 20, 30 times less than they are downstate. It's a very relatively cheap area, but it's also a beautiful. I mean, it's a bit of a hidden jewel within the state, let alone the wider US. So we did it on spec, Jim. We came over at the end of November 2019, and we flew into Toronto, and we flew out of Boston 4 or 5 days later, and we had a short list of properties we wanted to view. We made appointments, and we came to this particular property in Hammondsport, in the Finger Lakes, and we just fell in love with the property. We fell in love with the area, and we thought, well, if we're going to run a vegan bed and breakfast anywhere, this feels like it could be right for us.
It was goosebumps in the building because it's just so spectacular, and we could never afford this in the UK, because that's one thing that is less expensive here is property and petrol. Everything else is way more expensive than the UK, but property is really way less than in the UK. So that was one goosebumpy, viewing the property, and then we thought, well, let's go and see what the village has to offer. And it was like being on a film set. It's a cross between Back to the Future and It's a Wonderful Life. It's got a cute little village square with a bandstand in it. There's restaurants. There's a lake that's just gorgeous. And then we thought, let's go and have a beer. So we went into this bar, and they had a vegan burger. And we were just
I'll do.
Destiny.
Well, it won the cutest small town in America in there. It's like 2012 or something, and it is cutesy. It's really, and the lake's very pretty. Yeah. It's in the shape of a Y. It's just it's an unusual thing. There's a lot of wineries and breweries and distilleries around the lake, and a lot of hiking and stuff you can do on the lake. So as I said,
it's a good place to go on holiday, isn't it?
Plus, it's actually a good catchment area. I think with 25% of the US population is within about 4 or 5 hour drive, and Americans don't bat an eyelid at driving 5 hours just for a weekend away. It's crazy, but
wow, bigger roads, isn't it? Everything's bigger. But yeah, so November 2019, 4 days out here, road trip, viewing properties, spent about an hour and a half here. And so, being impulsive types, we were like owning it by the end of January 2020.
We owned it within 2 months of viewing it for an hour. It was crazy.
Yeah, not the best timing.
Our children thought, well, there was a combination of, oh, great, cheap holiday, mum and dad's place in America, and what the goodness me, what are you doing? Have you gone crazy? Are you senile already, Dad? But I mean, we went with their blessing, didn't we? Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen them face to face since, because obviously the pandemic has prevented the across Atlantic travel. But we hope to see them at some point later this year, maybe, if we're lucky. But
I think it's looking entirely possible now, so that's good.
What an incredible story to have an hour and a half out there and decided that we're gonna stay. I'm just absolutely amazed and bowled over, but also
you're not going to publish this podcast
sounds incredible.
You're not going to publish this podcast live from the local asylum. Yes,
genuinely sounds absolutely idyllic. Like I'm bowled over. You mentioned obviously that it's. Just how kind of quickly you made this decision. What was the learning curve like? I'm fascinated by that. Because there's one thing kind of thinking, we think we can do this, to actually let's run this, make this a profitable venture, etc. And then COVID hitting, I just can't imagine.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I think you assume we're all very familiar as Brits about the US. We watch TV. We know it all. We think we know it all. It's so different. It's so different than the UK in so many ways. The levels of bureaucracy are astonishing. And
particularly in this state, actually, New York State is renowned for it.
State laws, and then within the state there's counties, and within the counties there's towns, and within the towns there's villages. So they've all got an opinion, and a law and a tax associated with them, which is just like phenomenal.
Taxation is a completely different system here. Obviously, it's the fact that running a small business, if we were running this business in the UK, it would be, there's a lot of things you need to take into account, but at least you're aware of the basic terminology. It's the fact that we share a common language, but they don't say a lot of the things that they say. We have to wonder whether we know what they're talking about, and it's dangerous to assume you know what anybody's talking about. So in terms of your question, a very steep learning curve, and then the pandemic hit really before we got properly established, and then trying to get any response from anybody was a nightmare. Everything, people were deserting the public offices, and it was like a telephone answering system, and you wouldn't get the answers that you needed. So we were.
We had a catalogue of unfortunate events, actually, which I always think that part of my role here on Earth is to make other people feel how lucky they are. But I had, as a US citizen born here, I obviously got given a social security number. In some bureaucratic administrative glitch in the 1990s, they think, somebody voided my social security number. Without a social security number, you are an unperson. You can't open bank accounts. You can't get a learner's driving permit. You can't do, you can't do anything. So we existed here initially using UK bank cards you're paying for everything with the exchange rate. It was just crazy. Then your green card got redirected incorrectly to somebody who kindly wrote return to sender on it. So it landed in the mailbox of a government agency during a pandemic when everybody's working from home. So it just lay there festering. So we were just like unpeople for ages, and we had to like make a lot of noise and involve kind of congressmen, etc. to our cat's playing with something.
Playing with a biro. I'm just going to take it away because it's making a hell of a lot of noise.
Sorry. We're like a menagerie here. We can't help it. They're like, did somebody say podcast? We're just going to come and be really quiet in the background. Yeah, so...
Sorry. Have a cat playing with a pen in the background of a vegan podcast. When can you?
Yeah, exactly. We have trained them well. So, yeah, I know that's not maybe the learning curve that you were thinking about. I think one thing as well that having just looked at what other bed and breakfasts were offering in the States, they seem to have a different way of doing things, which is more prescriptive than maybe our experience in the UK, and also more prescriptive than we wanted to be with our guests. They tend to have communal eating, so around a big table with no choice, just being given something, and no time scale, just being given it at a certain time, which just felt a little bit, I don't know, didn't fit with us, didn't fit with what we wanted to do. So we decided to do things in a more British way, I suppose.
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's I don't think we could have done what we've done any other way, simply because we're British. So to try and do something in another way would have felt weird and probably wouldn't have had the same impact. But I think it has kind of marked us out slightly within this sort of the industry in this area, and I think Americans love the Brits. They want a piece of it, really. So
it's hilarious because people say to me that they love my accent, and I just laugh because nobody likes a Birmingham accent.
Well, yeah, it's not a strong. It's not a strong.
Since Peaky Blinders, everyone likes a Birmingham accent now.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah.
They're back. I was going to ask that actually, if as well as the sort of the veganism, the Britishness sets you out as different to others in the field. It sounds like it certainly does. What's been the feedback like from the, you mentioned there's a lot of omnivorous kind of customers, but have you had many kind of interactions with folks in the vegan community? Is there a vegan community like locally to you?
Yeah. But yeah, well, we met the only other vegan in the village within a couple of weeks of moving here. Lorraine, our saviour, we love it. Call her our Loza. She's our best mate in the world. She's just phenomenal. She's been tremendously helpful at helping us to navigate the differences between our two cultures, really. But yeah, we're actually 20 minutes away from Farm Sanctuary, which is the first farm animal sanctuary in the world, I believe, established by Gene Bohr and his then wife in the 80s, wasn't it?
80s, yeah.
So that's great. There's also, on the back of that, there's a number of other vegan establishments in the Finger Lakes. But I think a lot of the community around veganism has Farm Sanctuary at its centre. We've noticed small changes in offerings in the local eateries, which I like to take total credit for, because we're like kind of tinnitus, really. We just keep on and on and on and on and on and on. So there's been certainly restaurants have been introducing vegan options on their menu.
Shift, hasn't there?
Which has been gratifying.
But I suppose the world's moving on anyway. I mean, anybody in the restaurant trade that just completely ignores the growth in veganism is very short-sighted, frankly. I mean,
it's
but you're right.
It's a rural place here, though, isn't it? It's not like rural, being in a city. So things take longer to kind of spill out into some communities because there's no need, really, although this is a massive holiday destination, so it's in their interests. But also other vegan communities, I guess, are mainly on social media. Those are the links that we've made with the local, like I said earlier, there's the Cornell University's fairly near, so Ithaca, where that is, that's very huge vegan community there, and in Buffalo and Syracuse, Albany, as well as as well as in New York City. Yeah, there's a lot of different vegan groups out there, and we're getting a little bit of a reputation within the vegan circles, which is great, because
it is weird though, because we are in the centre of hunting country, so that it's a real mixed bag. And although the state is is voted Democrat in all of the presidential elections for goodness knows how long, upstate New York is a different environment, and I think they generally have a slightly different political leaning. I would be fair to say. So I guess we are a bit of a curiosity in many respects, but it hasn't done us any harm. Touch wood, it's done us no harm whatsoever. And I think we feel like we're spreading the word, spreading the love a little bit, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we are.
Yeah.
I was going to ask a question actually about, cause a lot of the people that I've spoken to who are based over in the States have been, East Coast, West Coast, and often residing around the cities, the New Yorks, the LAs, the San Franciscos, etc. With the exception actually of Dr. Ted Barnett from Rochester Lifestyle Medicine Institute, who was fantastic, and obviously relatively local to you. But often folks, and maybe it's their viewpoint from those cities, talk about rural communities in the States being a fair way behind, there being a bit of resentment and resistance to veganism. Obviously you've kind of landed within this community that you say there's like hunting and so on going on, and have you had many of those kind of to and fro discussions with anybody in that community, or has everybody kind of got a respectful distance?
I think we haven't really had to and fro discussions with anybody. We've not had debates. We've not tried to convert anybody. Nobody's ridiculed us.
We know that actually a lot of the feedback we get from the guests. A lot of our guests do come from the big cities. So we've got New York, Philadelphia, Boston, Cleveland. You name all of these guys. That they all are aware themselves of the difference between themselves and the folks on the road, as they would say, between their city and when they're coming to our place. It's almost like it is two different nations. It is very, very interesting that there is this kind of us and them. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think we've predominantly had people come from the cities, to get out of the cities, to get into the country and get away from the pandemic as much as anything else. And that's a very common approach that they take to us. They actually ask the same kind of questions as you ask. Well, what's it like living out here in the hinterland? And as I say, we haven't actually been bothered. I mean, Americans are generally extremely polite anyway, so that's helpful.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
We have way more polite than British people. It's really interesting. You wouldn't imagine it when you imagine what it's like to live out here. Maybe you have sort of preformed stereotypes just from TV watching, I suppose. But people are really, really polite and really very friendly and really very generous. I mean, that's one thing that we experienced when we bought the inn at the end of January 2020. We had to shut down on, I think it was the 17th of March. Because of the pandemic, and we were able to open up in June, but we were desperate. I mean, we'd landed here. Our contingency fund had been eaten into, firstly, by the fact that we had closing costs that were in excess of 12 grand more than the attorney told us that they were going to be. And then we had to just keep this massive property going without any income and without being able to access any of the federal support that was out there, because you need a credit history. You needed to be able to compare your 2019 tax return with what you're getting now. So we couldn't access any of that. We were really scared about how things were going to go. So we came up with an idea of just asking people to buy a gift certificate for our inn that we would make increase in value by 30% more. So if you bought a $100 one, it would be worth $130. We had people in the village who are never ever going to come and stay here buying vouchers off us to try and support us. They were just so happy that some new blood was in the village. We're going to turn over the inn. They were just so pleased, and that was great. We had our car off the road, a guy over the road who's got just a collection of these really sleek, top of the range cars. He's in marketing. He's got loads of money. He was just like, I'm in New Jersey, but this is the code for my barn. The keys are in the ignition. Just help yourself to whatever one you want. It's just like, sorry, we've never met you.
But we hadn't. Yeah, exactly. He was just a neighbour we'd never met, and he offered us his vehicle. But we've chased up some of these vouchers that we handed out a year ago, and people saying, "Oh, don't worry about that." We're pleased to have helped, and you think, wow, these. So the community itself, the village of Hammondsport. That generally is.
I think there's an us and them from villages to the more. I mean, the village has maybe got a pocket of people who maybe have a more varied life experience than the people who live really in the rural areas where you see abject poverty, really, as you drive between these pockets of civilization. It is a real mixed bag. I imagine between the pockets of civilization, I imagine that people would be incredibly resistant to veganism. But we've had a better reception within the village, with lots of people saying, are you going to be open to non-residents? I really want to come. And actually, I've hosted a couple of local groups to come and have breakfast with us who weren't resident, just because they wanted to come have a look at the inn and to eat the food. And that's interesting, because a lot of people then say, oh, I'm trying to be more plant-based. Oh, my doctor's told me I should avoid dairy. Oh, I really like this oat milk. Oh, what butter, what's your replacement
they're curious.
butter?
They're vegan curious, aren't they? I think, we've, pardon the pun, but we kind of whetted their appetite. And then by the time they're leaving, they actually want to know a bit of information about, well, what was that we were eating? Where do you get it from? I wonder if we can get it ourselves. So, yeah.
And every breakfast that they eat with us is one that hasn't cost an animal any pain or suffering. And if you add up collectively all of the carnists who've eaten with us in the time that we've been open, even if it is just one meal a day, I kind of feel that, it's not a major difference. It's not like, saving, running a sanctuary or doing some sort of cutting edge work, but it feels. I said earlier about being authentic and having integrity. It feels really gratifying, actually, to feed people and them enjoy it and them not miss meat, because they're surely going to start thinking differently.
I'm first of all just absolutely delighted to hear about the community rallying around you. I think it's like incredibly heartwarming to hear of like that story of people buying gift certificates and so on. I think that's just amazing that you sort of welcomed in like that. Just awe-inspiring to hear. And I think you're absolutely right. I think this kind of thing is its own form of activism. You know, like by your very existence in this kind of like being unique, doing something different, feeding, whether it's locals or people who've travelled to you with great vegan food, that it's going to spark conversation that you may never even see the result of, but you know, down the line, somebody's going to think, "Oh, that was amazing! Actually, maybe we should try that." And I just think it's a brilliant idea, and I love this idea that you're not really driving the point home too much. It just exists to be a brilliant B&B that happens to be vegan. I just think that's what a wonderful sort of vision for it, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, we don't conceal the fact that we're vegan. It's all over the website, vegan, plant-based vegan, you know, because I think that's important. But yeah, absolutely. I think that is it. Demystifying it it's just food, isn't it? The V word is scary. I'm just serving you food. Actually, tell me that there isn't an egg and butter in that muffin that you're eating, because you can't tell. You don't know. And people always say that, how did you do it without an egg?
Yeah.
Alchemy, man.
You must have used some dairy products in this. No. We're vegan. We don't use dairy.
So no, it's you're right, Jim. It feels it does feel great. It feels great.
Yeah. Is there a favourite dish that since you've gone vegan, sort of 5 years in? Obviously, a very capable chef. Is there one that, you know, for you, Miranda, you love to cook, and for you, Simon, you love to eat, by the sounds of it, that sort of stands out?
Well, for me, I'm amazed, relentlessly amazed at how Miranda can just conjure up amazing dishes from whatever's in the refrigerator. And what interesting, on our menu is a full English breakfast. Which is obviously a vegan full English breakfast, and that's been a very popular dish amongst our guests here, and it is pretty authentic, quite honestly. But it's just a vegan version of an authentic full English bed and breakfast. Breakfast you get in the UK, you know. And
I think what I've started doing recently, well, I can't do it in high season because we're just so busy, but I've started being more experimental and trying to work out different foods that I can make, and I've been making my own seitan recently, and that's really exciting. I got a cookbook by, I don't know if I'll say her name right, is it Miyoka Shina, the woman who's behind like making lots of vegan cheese and stuff. She's a long-time vegan, but she's got just a brilliant cookbook called The Vegan Pantry, and in that, the ribs, oh my God, sticky barbecue, seitan ribs. They're like chewy and unctuous and
they're the
crazy,
real deal. Yeah. They're definitely the real deal.
And that was your weakness when you were a carnist.
Well, I used to love pork ribs. I mean, the great thing is it's just like a pork rib, but there's not even any bones. You don't even have all that messy bone nonsense. You know, it's
and no death on your plate.
No death on my plate, darling. No.
So I enjoy cooking that very much, actually. Yeah. And I love making. I love soaking cashews and blending them and making them into all sorts of cheesy loveliness.
The other thing that's gone down an absolute storm is Miranda makes 3 different types of granola, and it was just really on the plate. You know, it was just an option on the table in jars. The number of people who said right from the start you ought to sell this. You know, you ought to sell this outside, or can we buy some to take home? And, you know, we thought about it and we thought, well, why not? And do
you like the we in that? We thought about that.
Oh. Well, I was there. I'm not taking any credit for your granola, love. I mean, your granola's fantastic, and I'm just eat it. That's all I do is eat it.
I'm joking.
But no, but that's been very popular. And the muffins you make. Well, tell about the association you got with Farm Sanctuary. Can you do that?
I think I can.
I don't know whether
you can always edit it out anyway, can't they? So one of our repeat guests, they're a couple from Brooklyn. He's British, but he's lived over here for 30 plus years, and she's American. And they were vegan before it was easy to be vegan. They were vegan, 30 plus years as well. So they're like maverick vegans. And he's a publisher.
Martin Rowe, he's
vegan
publisher.
Is it Liberty Book? They do a lot of non-fiction, ethical, environmental publishing, and she's a writer.
Mia McDonald.
And they've come to see us a couple of times, well, 3 times actually. And the last time she said, I keep telling Gene Bauer that he ought to come and stay with you. I'm going to buy some of your granola and send it to him. So she did. And then I was contacted by the events manager at Farm Sanctuary who said, we're short of a breakfast supplier at our grab-and-go breakfast when we open up our self-catering accommodation again. Can you deliver us some samples? And I did, and I'm gonna be supplying the food there as well. Yeah, that's pretty exciting.
Wow.
So Jim, she turned into a teenage girl when Jim Bauer and his girlfriend came. She was so starstruck.
This is not going on. Jim, it's not.
Is that what you were?
I was very excited.
Gene. Gene.
You'll have to edit out me swearing in a minute. I've been very good. I've not dropped one F-bomb yet.
I know. She has a potty mouth.
Yeah. And on the back of that, then out of the blue, Gene Bauer phoned up and said, really excited to hear about what you're doing there. We'd love to come and have a look around. So he did. They came, spent 4 hours with us. And he's keen to develop the Finger Lakes into the go-to vegan destination. Which is very exciting because obviously we'll be playing a part in that. And that's
he
exciting.
posted about us a couple of times. How many followers has he got?
He's got a lot of followers.
Oh, okay, more than we have. So that's nice.
Everybody's got more followers than us.
Well, we're working on it, aren't we? But,
That was chaos, sorry.
That was a fun story. No, not at all. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a fantastic insight. And thank you so much for the story. I feel like I got a little exclusive there about our little partnership. It was fantastic. Sounds like you might have an entrepreneurial kind of streak in the granola world. I can see a granola range hitting shelves across the world at some point by the sounds of it.
Well,
I'm keen to try it.
Finger Lakes at the moment, next world domination now.
I can see it.
Well, I have got an
see
Etsy
it now.
shop.
I can see it now. Oh, there you go. There you go. So, as things are starting to open up, hopefully the future looks like international travel, but and some folks coming across from over the pond. Have you had much interest from folks back home who are kind of keen to get across and see you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of friends are looking forward to coming out. So in terms of people that we don't know, we haven't really begun to look at that market.
No. What'll be very interesting is when the US-Canada border opens up, because we're about 2 and a bit hours from Toronto, which is the 9th largest city in the whole of North America, and it's got a huge vegan community. So once that border opens, we're going to be going up, and I'm going to be going up and down the main street with a sandwich board saying, get your vegan bed and breakfast here, because I think we can tap into a lot of kind of weekend breaks, kind of people coming out of Toronto. I'm quite excited about that as being an additional string to our bow, really. And they've got a huge social media grouping there. So it's all going to be. But as we said earlier, really, it's probably more gratifying for us to be hosting non-vegans and for them to go away, if not completely converted, at least with some important messages that's sunk in, and hopefully rather than preaching to the converted all the time, it's nice to mix it up and hopefully sow the seed, as it were, pardon the pun, with non-vegans.
Yeah, and it's a really kind of sort of backdoor way of evangelising about your beliefs, isn't it? Just subtly feeding people. And we've got a few kind of photographs as you walk into in the entrance area is like a small shop area where we've got local artists and stuff that we sell, and obviously the granola. But in there we've got some photographs of animals from, my favourite sanctuary, which is Odd Man Inn, which kind of has sparked a few bits of conversation. But in the guest lounge as well, on the coffee table, I bought just a lovely book by Iso Leshka. I think that's how you say her name. Oh, cat in the house. And she spent 10 years travelling around farm sanctuaries in the US. She's a photographer and a vegan activist. Getting to know some of the animals in them and getting to know their stories and taking just the most beautiful, poignant black and white portraits of them. It's called Allowed to Grow Old. And this is a beautiful book of photographs of elderly farm animals. And it wakes you up again, like that moment where you discover that actually being a vegetarian isn't good enough. It's like, I've never seen an old pig, I've never seen an old bird, because they're bred to and fed hormones, and they're bred to get fat and to die quickly. We don't. They eat baby animals. And that's been interesting, because I've seen a few guests sitting there flicking through, and you kind of think, I really hope, even if you just make a commitment to maybe have meat-free Monday or something, I really hope that this helps to make the link between what you're putting in your mouth and how it got there. And I think that's what people don't have. That's what we don't want to. We don't want to acknowledge how these things got here. If we don't think about it, it didn't happen, and we can continue to condone our own behaviour. God, I'm going on.
Well, it's how you feel. You're very passionate about it.
I am very passionate. Yeah.
I'd say the guests that we have that are non-vegan, they see the path in a kind of a step form, and a lot of them feedback that they if they've not already started, they are going to start cutting out red meat. That's the first stage for most people. They think that's the easiest one to have a go at and to get out. A lot of them say, well, but I can't ever see me not eating eggs, or I must have milk. And then I say, what you mean, cow's milk, as opposed to any of the other milks? Because milk is not just, that's cow's milk. It's just one version of it. So without, as you say, without kind of ramming it down people's throats as far as being a vegan, and I think the fact that our stories are totally different, we are coming from a different angle. One way or another, we are kind of making connections in people's minds as far as, well, should I just be thinking about it in terms of my health? And even if I don't care about the welfare of animals, maybe I should care about myself more, and maybe that's the answer. And I've sensed that the pandemic has possibly helped some of that messaging get out there. I believe, it's just a personal view, and I've got nothing to back it up really, Jim, but I just feel like people have had more time on their hands, not doing what they've normally done, and giving them things to think about, and their health. The pandemic has made people pretty edgy about their health, and that's possibly has helped them to think more in terms of eating more healthily. Well, I hope so. Anyway, I hope it's had that. If there's one positive thing to come out of it, hopefully there'll be a growth in veganism. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
I truly hope so. Truly hope so. And I absolutely think you both are playing a fantastic part in helping people along that journey as well. So a huge sort of thank you for everything you're doing, really, and I can't wait to get over there. That would be an exciting trip, definitely.
Absolutely.
So just finally, just so folks can find you, whereabouts would you go about looking you up? Hopefully, fingers crossed, in the near future, booking a trip.
Well, our website address is www.stayblacksheepin.com.
Super.
And we have
nice
a Facebook page, which is...
And you're on Instagram too?
Yeah.
Facebook?
Yeah, Black Sheep Inn and Spa on both Instagram and Facebook, Black Sheep Inn and Spa. And we feature on TripAdvisor as well, because we recently won the
we won a Traveller's Award.
Award.
We top 10% of hotels in the world, and we just came completely out of the blue. You know what it's like? You get these emails, you think, oh, this is a bit of a scam. They're trying to sell us something, but it actually came from TripAdvisor, and it said, download your certificate here. And we downloaded it, and my goodness me, it says you've won this award because of the reviews that you've had in the last 12 months, and that puts you in the top 10% of hotels globally. So it completely floored us, didn't it? And so we proudly got it on. We got it in a frame in the front hallway.
Yeah.
But we've had some fabulous reviews from people, and people have been very clear to say, look, I went there as a non-vegan and I had a ball, and you should go there if you're a vegan or not a vegan. It doesn't make any difference. The food is amazing. Da ba da ba da. And then they talk about the other things to do with the area and the facilities within the bed and breakfast. That is, to us, that I know we've touched on it already, but as a vegan, you either can go somewhere that's 5-star. I'm not saying we're 5-star, but somewhere that's a very good hotel or whatever it might be. But good luck trying to find any decent vegan foods, and certainly not vegan breakfast in any 5-star hotels. Or, and I know there's no disrespect to other people running vegan establishments, or you may well have a fairly rustic experience, certainly around here, but have a vegan breakfast. So what we felt is that vegans actually they're not all hippies by any stretch, as you've already alluded previously.
Even hippies like comfort.
Even hippies like comfort, to be fair, So why can't you find some?
Yeah.
Why can't you find somewhere with a bit of luxury, but know for absolute certain that everything that's being dished up to you is vegan? It's to us, we feel that brings us on a level footing with other people.
Yeah, it's been really interesting talking with you, actually, because it's kind of just made me think. I feel we've really achieved quite a lot in a year, haven't we?
Yeah, well, you should. Well, certainly she should be proud of herself. She's the one doing all the hard work, and I just talk a lot, as you can probably tell.
Yeah,
I think you should both be very proud of it.
Some of the guests have said I should get him electronically tagged and just emit a slight electric shock every time he just talks too much.
So she has a bell in the kitchen, Jim. So there's this bell, and I can tell if she just pings
it's
it
like
once.
Breaking Bad.
If she pings it once, that means there's a dish ready. If it's like bing, 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 I'm just talking too much. That's all. It's kind of code,
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you both so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, and I will hopefully see you down in the Finger Lakes soon.
You're welcome anytime, Jim.
Yeah, you'd love it. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Bring you and your family over. The ball.